Why does every firstborn daughter in my family die on her wedding night? I found the death certificates in my grandmother's cedar chest while looking for my great-grandmother's wedding veil. There were 7 of them, dating back to 1952, each one documenting the death of a firstborn daughter in the Ashford family on her wedding night. The causes varied: heart failure, accidental fall, allergic reaction, carbon monoxide poisoning, drowning in the bathtub. But the timing was identical. Every single one died within hours of saying their vows. I was holding these certificates in my hands 3 months before my own wedding to Daniel, and I was the firstborn daughter of the current generation. My mother had been a second daughter. Her older sister Colleen had died in 1989 on her wedding night from what was ruled an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. I had never questioned it before because I was only 2 years old when it happened, and the family never talked about Aunt Colleen. But now, staring at this pattern of death spanning 7 decades, I felt ice flooding my veins. I photographed every certificate with my phone and put them back exactly as I had found them. My grandmother Dorothy was downstairs making tea, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that I had just discovered evidence of what looked like systematic murder in our family. I needed to understand what I was looking at before I confronted anyone. I needed to know if this pattern was real or if I was seeing connections that did not exist. That night, I created a spreadsheet documenting every firstborn daughter I could find in our family tree going back 5 generations. The pattern was undeniable. 8 firstborn daughters had married. All 8 had died on their wedding nights. The second daughters, third daughters, and all the sons lived normal lifespans. Only the firstborn daughters who married died young. The ones who never married lived into old age. My great-great-aunt Margaret, a firstborn daughter who never wed, lived to 94. But her younger sister, who married at 23, lived only until her wedding night. I called my cousin Iris, the family genealogy expert who had spent years researching our ancestry. I asked her casually if she had noticed anything unusual about the firstborn daughters in our family tree. There was a long pause before she spoke. "You found something, didn't you? What did you find?" Her voice had gone tight and careful. I told her about the death certificates and the pattern I had documented. She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "Meet me tomorrow at the county records office. Do not tell anyone in the family you are looking into this. Do not tell Daniel. Do not tell your parents. Just meet me at noon and bring everything you found." She hung up before I could ask why the secrecy. But her fear had been palpable even through the phone. Whatever this pattern meant, she already suspected something terrible. The county records office had archives going back to the 1800s. Iris was waiting for me in the research room with boxes of documents already pulled. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed behind her glasses. "I have been researching this for 3 years," she said quietly. "Ever since I found out I was pregnant with a girl and my grandmother told me to pray it was not a firstborn. I thought she was being superstitious. But then I started looking at the family records, and I found the same pattern you did. Every firstborn daughter who marries dies on her wedding night. I have been trying to figure out why." She spread documents across the table between us. Property deeds, wills, inheritance records, marriage certificates. Our family has been wealthy for generations. The Ashford estate has been passed down through the male line since 1847. But there is a clause in the original family trust that I only found last year buried in old legal documents at the courthouse. The document she showed me was dated 1847, written in elaborate script that was hard to read. But the relevant section was clear once Iris translated it. If a firstborn daughter married, her dowry and inheritance share would transfer to her husband's family upon consummation of marriage. But if she died before consummation, her share reverted to the Ashford family trust to be distributed among male heirs. The trust had been established when the family made their fortune in railroads and real estate. The original patriarch, Jonathan Ashford, had structured it to keep wealth consolidated in the family name. Over generations, this meant that firstborn daughters represented a potential loss of significant money and property if they married and had children who could claim inheritance through their mother's line. "Do you understand what this means?" Iris asked, her hands shaking as she held the document. "For 170 years, someone in our family has been murdering firstborn daughters on their wedding nights to keep the money in the male bloodline." My stomach turned and I thought I might be sick right there in the records office. Who? Who has been doing this?" Iris pulled out another document, a list of trustees who had overseen the family trust throughout its history. "The trust is managed by the eldest male Ashford in each generation. Right now, that is your Uncle Grant. Before him, it was your grandfather William before he died. Before that, your great-uncle Howard. Every single one of these men was alive and serving as trustee when a firstborn daughter in the family died on her wedding night." I stared at the names, recognizing all of them as beloved family patriarchs. Men who had been at every family gathering, who had given toasts at weddings and held babies at christenings. Men who had methodically murdered young women in their own family to protect inherited wealth. "Uncle Grant," I whispered. "He is walking me down the aisle because my father died when I was 10. He has been helping plan my wedding. He has been so supportive and kind." Iris's expression was grim. "He has also been asking detailed questions about your wedding night plans, hasn't he? Where you and Daniel are staying, what time you will arrive at the hotel, whether you have any food allergies or medical conditions." I thought back over the past few months of wedding planning. Uncle Grant had indeed asked those questions, framed as caring concern about my safety and happiness. He had suggested the hotel where Daniel and I planned to spend our wedding night, saying he had connections there and could get us an upgraded suite. He had asked about my medication routine because he wanted to send a gift basket with my favorite items. Details I had thought were thoughtful now looked sinister. "He is planning how to kill me," I said, and hearing the words out loud made them real in a way that turned my blood to ice. "On my wedding night, Uncle Grant is going to murder me and make it look like an accident so the trust money stays with the male heirs." Iris nodded. "Your brother Kevin would inherit your share, but he is only 12, so the money would be managed by the trustee, which is Uncle Grant, until Kevin turns 25. Grant has been managing trust funds for 2 decades. He has gotten very rich off managing other people's inheritances." She showed me financial documents indicating Grant's management fees and investment returns over the years. He had been taking significant percentages while presenting himself as a devoted family steward. "We need to go to the police," I said, but Iris shook her head. "With what evidence? A pattern of deaths that could be coincidence? A trust document from 1847 that does not explicitly call for murder? We have circumstantial connections but no proof. And Grant is well connected in this town. He plays golf with the police chief. He donates to the sheriff's election campaigns. If we accuse him without solid evidence, he will know we are onto him and he will move up his timeline. You will be in immediate danger." I felt trapped. My wedding was in 3 months. I could not cancel without explaining why, and if I told Daniel or my mother the truth, they would either think I was crazy, or they would confront Grant directly and tip him off. "What do I do?" I asked Iris, hearing the desperation in my own voice. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "This is an investigative journalist I have been in contact with. Her name is Simone Flores, and she specializes in historical crimes and family conspiracies. I sent her some preliminary information about our family pattern, and she is very interested. She wants to meet with you, hear your story, and potentially do an investigation that could expose what has been happening. But she needs time to build the case, probably at least 6 months, which means you need to postpone your wedding." The thought of postponing crushed me. Daniel and I had been planning this day for a year. My dress was altered, the venue was booked, 200 guests had received invitations, but staying alive mattered more than any of that. "I will call her," I said, taking the card. Simone Flores met me at a coffee shop on the other side of town where no one from my family would see us. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a recording device she placed on the table between us after asking my permission. I told her everything Iris and I had discovered. She took notes and asked clarifying questions, then showed me research she had already compiled. "Your family is not unique," she said. "There are at least 3 other families in this state with similar patterns of firstborn daughter deaths connected to old inheritance trusts. It is a form of systematic femicide driven by property law and greed. These families established trusts in the 1800s when women had limited property rights, and rather than update the trusts to reflect modern values, male heirs have chosen to eliminate female competition for inheritance." She had files on the other families, death certificates, and financial documents that showed identical patterns spanning generations. "The challenge is proving intent and current criminal activity. The deaths are always ruled accidental or natural causes. No one has ever been prosecuted." "So Grant will get away with it?" I felt fury rising through my fear. "No," Simone said firmly. "Not if we are smart about this. We need to gather evidence of his planning and his intent to harm you specifically. That means you need to wear a wire and get him to talk about his plans. It means setting up surveillance to document his actions. And it means putting you in a controlled, dangerous situation where we can catch him in the act while keeping you safe." The thought of deliberately putting myself in danger made my hands shake, but the alternative was living my entire life unmarried to avoid being killed, or marrying and hoping I somehow survived what 7 other women had not. "What do I need to do?" I asked. Simone outlined a plan that would take months to execute. I would continue with wedding planning, acting completely normal, while wearing a recording device during conversations with Uncle Grant. We would document every question he asked, every suggestion he made, every detail he gathered about my wedding night. I postponed the wedding by 3 months, claiming we needed more time to save money for our honeymoon. Daniel was disappointed but understanding. Uncle Grant seemed pleased by the delay, which Simone said was a telling reaction. "He wants more time to plan," she explained. "The more elaborate his preparation, the more evidence we can gather." Over the next weeks, I met with Grant regularly for wedding planning discussions, always wearing the tiny recording device Simone had given me. Grant asked about my food preferences for the wedding night room service. He asked about my medication routine and whether I took anything to help me sleep. He asked detailed questions about the hotel room layout and whether Daniel and I planned to drink champagne or wine with dinner. Every question seemed innocuous on its own, but together they painted a picture of someone gathering information to plan a murder. During one conversation, Grant mentioned that he had a friend who worked at the hotel and could arrange for a special surprise in our room. When I asked what kind of surprise, he smiled and said it would be a secret. "Just trust me. I have always looked out for you, haven't I? Ever since your father died, I have tried to be there for you. I want your wedding night to be perfect and memorable." The way he said memorable made my skin crawl. That recording was damning because his tone and emphasis suggested something sinister beneath the surface words. Simone said it was good evidence, but not enough. We need him to make an explicit threat or admission. We need him to incriminate himself clearly. She set up surveillance cameras in my apartment and tracking devices on my car. We were building a case brick by brick, recording by recording. 2 months before the rescheduled wedding, I received a gift basket at my apartment. The card said it was from Uncle Grant, a collection of my favorite teas and chocolates and bath products. Simone had me bring everything to her immediately without consuming any of it. She had the items tested by a private lab, and 3 of the products came back positive for toxic substances. The bath salts contained a compound that could cause cardiac arrest if absorbed through the skin during a hot bath. One of the chocolate boxes contained nuts despite Grant knowing I was severely allergic. The sleep tea had been laced with a sedative dose that would be fatal when combined with alcohol. He is testing delivery methods, Simone said grimly. He is figuring out what will work on your wedding night. This is attempted murder. We can go to the police now with this evidence. But when Simone contacted the detective she knew in the state police, he said the evidence was concerning but not conclusive. Grant could claim he purchased the items from a vendor and was unaware they were contaminated. He could claim the nut chocolate was an oversight. We needed something more direct. The detective, Lawrence Finch, agreed to get involved officially if we could document Grant making explicit plans or attempting to harm me in a controlled setting. Set up a scenario where he thinks he has the opportunity, Detective Finch suggested. Make him believe the wedding night is proceeding as planned and let him make his move with us watching. The plan was terrifying but necessary. We would stage a fake wedding night at the hotel Grant had recommended. I would check in with a stand-in wearing my clothes, while I watched from a surveillance van with Simone and police. We would have cameras in every corner of the hotel room documenting whatever Grant did when he thought I was vulnerable. If he entered the room or did anything to compromise my safety, we would have him on multiple felony charges. What about Daniel? I asked. He doesn't know any of this. He thinks we are getting married in 6 weeks. Simone said I needed to tell him everything before the sting operation. He deserves to know what is happening and why, and you need his support. Telling Daniel was one of the hardest conversations of my life. We sat in my apartment and I showed him everything. The death certificates, the trust documents, the recordings of Grant, the toxicology reports on the gift basket. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, horror, and rage. He was going to kill you, Daniel said, his voice shaking. Your own uncle was planning to murder you on our wedding night, and I would have found you dead and never known the truth. He held me while I cried, all the fear and stress of the past months finally breaking through. We are going to stop him, Daniel said firmly. We are going to make sure he never hurts anyone again. And then we are going to get married for real and live a very long, happy life together just to spite this entire horrific tradition. His determination helped me find my own courage again. We were going to end this pattern that had killed 8 women across 7 generations. The sting operation was set for a Saturday in late September, the original date of our rescheduled wedding. We sent invitations to a small intimate ceremony at a chapel, claiming we wanted to elope quietly before the big celebration. We invited only immediate family, including Uncle Grant. The ceremony was real. Daniel and I exchanged real vows in front of a real minister with our parents and siblings present. Grant smiled throughout, giving a touching speech about how proud he was to stand in for my father and see me marry such a fine man. He hugged me after the ceremony and whispered, "Your father would be so happy to see this day. I know I have tried my best to honor his memory by taking care of you. Tonight is the beginning of your beautiful future." The way he said it, knowing he planned to end that future before morning, made me want to scream. But I smiled and thanked him for everything he had done for me. After the ceremony, Daniel and I drove to the hotel Grant had recommended. We checked into the suite Grant had arranged, the one he had asked detailed questions about. Once inside, I changed into clothing identical to what a stand-in was wearing in a different room 3 floors down. That room was the one fully surveilled, the one Grant thought I was in. I left through a service exit and joined Simone, Detective Finch, and 2 other officers in an unmarked van across the street. We had 8 cameras in the decoy room, motion sensors on the doors and windows, and audio recording equipment. Daniel stayed in our real suite, awake and armed with a panic button in case Grant somehow figured out the switch and came after us. Now we wait, Detective Finch said. The stand-in, an undercover officer named Carla Mendez, who resembled me in build and coloring, was in the decoy room pretending to sleep. We waited 4 hours. I was starting to think Grant had somehow known it was a trap when movement appeared on one of the camera feeds. A figure in hotel staff uniform entered the room using a keycard. The person moved confidently, heading straight for the minibar. Grant, I realized. He had obtained a hotel staff uniform and a master keycard, probably through the friend he mentioned who worked at the hotel. We watched on multiple angles as he pulled items from a bag he carried. He opened a champagne bottle that was in the room, added something from a small vial, and recorked it carefully. Then he went to the bathroom and placed something behind the toilet, too small for the cameras to clearly capture. He checked the thermostat, turning the heat up significantly, and adjusted the bathtub taps to ensure they were loosened. Every action was calculated, creating multiple potential methods of death. An accidental overdose from drugged champagne, a slip in an overheated room, a fall that could be blamed on intoxication. Detective Finch spoke into his radio, coordinating with officers in the hotel. "We need to take him before he leaves the room. We have everything on camera, but I want him caught in the act with the evidence on him." Two officers entered the hallway outside the decoy room just as Grant was finishing his preparations. They knocked on the door, announcing themselves as hotel security investigating a noise complaint. Grant froze, his face visible on camera, calculating whether to answer or flee. He chose to answer, opening the door with a practiced smile and claiming he was just checking to make sure everything was perfect for the newlyweds. "I am the bride's uncle," he said smoothly. "I wanted to make sure the room was suitable for such a special night." The officers asked him to step into the hallway and explain why he was in a guest room using a staff keycard he was not authorized to have. Grant's smile faded as Detective Finch emerged from the elevator with two more officers. "Grant Ashford, I am Detective Lawrence Finch with the State Police. We need to talk about what you were just doing in that room." Grant's expression went cold and calculating. "I have no idea what you are talking about. I was simply checking on my niece's room to ensure everything was satisfactory for her wedding night. Is that a crime?" Detective Finch gestured to the officers. "We have video of you tampering with the champagne bottle, placing an unknown substance behind the toilet, and adjusting room conditions in ways that could cause harm. We need you to come with us for questioning." Grant laughed, actually laughed. "You are arresting me for being a caring uncle? This is absurd. I want my lawyer." But his voice had an edge that betrayed his fear. The officers searched the bag he was carrying and found 3 vials of clear liquid, a bottle of prescription sedatives not in his name, and a master keycard that hotel management confirmed was stolen from a staff locker 2 days prior. I watched from the van as they arrested Uncle Grant and led him in handcuffs through the hotel lobby. Guests stared and whispered, probably wondering what crime had occurred in this upscale establishment. Grant saw the cameras recording him and his mask finally dropped completely. He looked directly at one camera and said, "She does not deserve that money. None of them did. They were just going to give it away to their husbands and children. I was protecting the family legacy." Detective Finch stopped and turned to face Grant. "Who are you talking about? Who does not deserve what money?" But Grant had realized his mistake and went silent, refusing to say another word until his lawyer arrived. Still, the statement had been recorded and was damning evidence that his actions were motivated by inheritance concerns. Simone was already typing furiously on her laptop, incorporating this confession into the article she had been drafting for months. The search of Grant's home and office turned up extensive documentation of his planning. He had spreadsheets tracking every firstborn daughter in the family for 3 generations, with detailed notes about their wedding dates, locations, and vulnerabilities. He had research on various toxins and their detection rates in post-mortem examinations. He had correspondence with the hotel staff member who had helped him obtain the master keycard. And most damning, he had a journal detailing the deaths of the previous 7 firstborn daughters, written in clinical language that showed no remorse. One entry about my Aunt Colleen read, "Subject given sedative overdose at 11:30 p.m. Death occurred approximately 2:15 a.m. Ruled accidental. Trust funds successfully retained. Management fees for next year will increase substantially." He had been documenting his murders as if they were business transactions. The prosecutor charged Grant with 8 counts of first-degree murder for the previous deaths and 1 count of attempted murder for his actions against me. The journal entries were enough to reopen investigations into all 7 previous deaths. Exhumations were ordered where possible, and new toxicology tests were performed using modern techniques not available at the times of death. 5 of the 7 bodies showed evidence of poisoning or forced overdoses that had been missed in original examinations. The other 2 had been cremated, but witness testimony and circumstantial evidence supported murder charges. Grant's lawyer tried to argue that the journal was creative fiction, but the level of detail about crime scenes and victim vulnerabilities made that defense impossible. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified about Grant's questions, the gift basket, his insistence on controlling wedding night details. Iris testified about the family trust and inheritance patterns. Simone testified about her investigation and the broader pattern of femicide in wealthy families with outdated inheritance structures. The most devastating testimony came from my grandmother Dorothy, who finally broke her silence about what she had known. On the witness stand, she admitted she had suspected her husband William and later her son Grant were involved in the deaths of firstborn daughters, but she had been too afraid to speak up. "I thought if I said anything they would kill me too," she said, crying. "I thought if I just stayed quiet and never had firstborn daughters myself, I would be safe. But I watched those girls die and I did nothing. I am as guilty as the men who actually killed them." Her testimony was heartbreaking and infuriating. She had chosen her own safety over the lives of 8 young women in her own family. The prosecutor did not charge her because she had not directly participated in the murders, but her confession destroyed what remained of our family's reputation. The jury found Grant guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 8 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole, ensuring he would die in prison. During sentencing, the judge made a statement that was widely reported in media coverage of the case. The defendant systematically murdered young women in his own family over a period of decades, motivated by greed and a patriarchal worldview that valued money over human life. He showed no remorse and saw these victims as obstacles to wealth rather than as human beings with inherent worth. This court recognizes the historical context of discriminatory inheritance laws that created the conditions for these crimes, but that context does not excuse the defendant's actions. He made a choice to kill rather than reform the trust. He chose murder over morality 8 times. This community and this family will carry the scars of his evil for generations. Grant showed no emotion as he was led away. His final words before leaving the courtroom were to his lawyer, asking about filing an appeal. The case generated national attention. Simone's article ran in a major magazine and was picked up by news outlets across the country. It exposed not just my family's situation, but the broader issue of how outdated inheritance laws and family trusts continued to create incentives for violence against women. Legal scholars began examining how many other families might have similar patterns. Lawmakers in 3 states introduced legislation requiring regular review of family trusts established before 1900 to ensure they complied with modern equal protection standards. The Ashford Family Trust was dissolved by court order, with all assets liquidated and distributed equally among all living descendants regardless of gender or birth order. My brother Kevin received his share in a protected account he could not access until age 25, managed by independent trustees with no family connection. I received my inheritance immediately and used a significant portion to establish a foundation supporting women escaping family violence and investigating suspicious deaths of women in wealthy families. Daniel and I postponed our real wedding until the trial was over. We wanted to celebrate without the shadow of attempted murder hanging over us. When we finally did marry, 18 months after Grant's arrest, it was a small ceremony on a beach with just close friends and carefully vetted family members. Iris was my maid of honor. Simone attended as a guest and friend. Detective Finch came too, saying he wanted to see the happy ending to this case. My grandmother Dorothy did not come. I had not spoken to her since her testimony, unable to forgive her decades of complicit silence. My mother attended, but our relationship was strained. She had known about the pattern of firstborn daughter deaths, but had convinced herself it was tragic coincidence rather than murder. Learning the truth had broken something in her. Our wedding night was in a cabin Daniel and I rented in the mountains, far from any hotels or family connections. I stayed awake most of the night anyway, anxiety making sleep impossible despite knowing Grant was in prison 300 miles away. Daniel held me and we talked about the future, about the children we might have someday, and how we would tell them this story. If we have a daughter, I said, if we have a firstborn daughter, I want her to know what happened. I want her to know that her great-great-great-grandfather created a system that valued wealth over women's lives, and that her great-uncle enforced that system through murder. But I also want her to know that her mother survived and broke the pattern and made sure it could never happen again. Daniel kissed my forehead and promised we would tell our children the truth, all of it, so they understood how important it was to question family traditions and speak up when something felt wrong. I am 32 now, 5 years after Grant's conviction. Daniel and I have 2 daughters. The oldest is named Colleen, after my aunt who died before I was born. Our second daughter is named Rebecca, after one of the other firstborn daughters who died in 1978. I want their names to be a memorial and a promise that their deaths meant something, that they led to change. My daughters will inherit equally with any brothers or sisters they might have someday. They will grow up knowing they are valued not for their place in a birth order or their ability to preserve wealth, but for who they are as people. Last month, Colleen asked why she was named after someone who died. She is 5 and already asking hard questions. I told her the truth in age-appropriate language, that her great-great-uncle did something very bad that hurt people in our family, and that Mommy worked with police to stop him, and that Aunt Colleen's name helps us remember to always stand up against people who try to hurt others. She absorbed this information with the seriousness of a child who senses something important, and then asked if I was brave. I told her yes, I was brave, and so was she for asking hard questions. The pattern is broken. No more firstborn daughters will die on their wedding nights in the Ashford family, because the system that incentivized those deaths no longer exists, and the man who enforced it will never be free again. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.